You are now listening to the Artist King podcast, featuring interviews with professional artists, entrepreneurs, and art business educators. Artist King's mission is to fuel the passion and build the business knowledge of the artists to further their success in the art industry. We want to hear your suggestions and comments and subject ideas to discuss in future podcasts. Please send an email to podcast@artistking.org.
Welcome to episode 13 of the Artist King podcast. I'm your host, DTM. I want to take the time to thank our Artist King sponsors. The law offices of Deborah Gonzalez, Binders Art Store, now opening a new Midtown store, Atlanta Tech Village, C4 Atlanta, Wonder Root, Burnaway, and donors like you who visit artistking.org and leave a donation to support the mission of Artist King. This year's Artist King Conference takes place across the Atlanta area and spans 8 weeks starting in September 9th till November 4th. And ending at the biggest art show of the year, November 22nd in Buckhead. Artist King will feature a creative panel of entrepreneurs, professional artists, and art industry organizations discussing topics that affect the artist, the community, and the business of being an artist. The November art show is titled The Way of the Artist and will feature the LAE class of 2014, their art, body paint, and our infamous Pencil Wars drawing competition that includes every person present at the show. Our featured DJ is Mr. E, rocking the crowd till late at night. Mark your calendar, November 22nd at the Atlanta Tech Village. The call for art is now open. Email me directly to add you to the artist list at dtm@artistking.org. Keep checking artistking.org for upcoming classes, workshops, art exhibits, and of course, the Artist King podcast. Tell a friend. Today we sit down with Balogun Ojetade, and he shares with us his story as a writer and his current works in progress as featured in chroniclesofharriet.com, as well as why it's important for each one of us to tell our own story. Balogun, along with Milton Davis, are the frontrunners in Afrofuturism, Black speculative fiction, diesel funk, steamfunk, and many other styles of storytelling featuring strong African heroes. I am excited by many of his upcoming stories, and so should you. Please visit chroniclesofharriet.com and come on in. Now on to our Artist King interview. Here is Balogun Ojetade. We're at Artist King Podcast. This is Dan the Man. I'm sitting here with Balogun. Hello, Balogun. Thank you for coming by.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
You're a great guy. I love what you're doing. Please tell our listeners your name and what you do.
All right. My name is Balogun Ojetade. I am an author of 6 novels and contributing co-editor of 2 anthologies. I'm also a martial arts master instructor. I teach indigenous African martial arts. I'm semi-retired now. And I'm a father of 8, grandfather of 2, husband, and priest. So,
wow.
That's me, yeah.
Grandfather of 8?
Yes.
How old are these children?
My oldest is 26.
What? You have a grandchild of 26
Oh,
years
my
old?
grandchild? No. No, my grandchildren are 2 and 8 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, she'll be 2 August 29th, and then my grandson will be 1 October 21st.
Okay, so you got 2 grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And children, but children you have 8.
Children, yeah.
Wow, and the oldest is 26.
Yeah, and the youngest is 5.
What?
Yeah.
Look at
7 girls and 1 boy, and my wife doesn't want to stop yet. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. We won't touch on that subject. So, a priest.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
I'm a traditional African priest in the tradition of Ifa, which is the tradition of the Yoruba people from southwest Nigeria. I'm what's called an Obatala priest and an Ifa priest, which is, I guess, would be considered a high priest.
Mm-hmm. Well, how did that come about?
Well,
Is there an application process?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have been doing indigenous African martial arts all my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been surrounded by African culture. I got involved in other forms of spirituality, thinking it was African, and it was not. And then finally, when I moved here 15 years ago, and I began to study. I met a priest at that time who had gotten initiated in Nigeria, and I began my study process at that time. Mm-hmm. And I was initiated myself to Obatala 5 years ago, and to Ifa 3 years ago.
So what does a priest do?
Well, you serve the community, you educate.
Mm-hmm.
You also do what we call divination. You know, some people call it readings, but it's not like Cleo, call me now. It's not that kind of. It's a science based on the binary system. It's the first binary system. We know the computer is based off a binary system of zeros and ones,
mm-hmm.
and what we do is based off a binary system of ones and twos.
Oh, okay.
And so it's a
no
science.
No zeros.
No
1 and 2.
zeros.
Correct.
Yeah,
okay.
no zeros, just heroes. So it's based off of ones and twos.
Uh-huh.
And 256 patterns of life we deal with, just like it's 256 color patterns in the computer.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we kind of think they got their information from us.
Of course.
You know, of course, when you're doing anytime you do a search on Google, you say Google this and this, and it'll say such and such percent, such and such. Well, it's divining on what you're looking for,
mm-hmm.
and it gives you from there these options.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same way. That's the way divination works.
Huh.
Yeah.
So you're the human Google? No.
Yeah, exactly. The Google.
Okay. I'm gonna be serious. Okay, that's cool. So it's a progression. It's not something that you woke up one day and said, I'm gonna try this priest thing. I like it. I think it's cool.
No, I think most things, if you're going to be proficient, you have to really put in some work. You can't just wake up and say, I'm going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, but then you'll find you got to take a step back and really research and train.
The beginning is a little further back.
Exactly.
Than right there.
Right.
So let's talk about that beginning. So because today, and not just today, as in today Sunday
mm-hmm.
when we're recording our podcast, or Saturday, sorry. But right now you have these books under your belt. You published, and you're producing, you're creating constantly. What was the beginning of that like? Where'd you grow up, and where was that that first inspiration come from?
I grew up on the west side of Chicago, a very poor area called the South Lawndale area. Wasn't much to do, but I grew up in a time long before the internet and all that. So we had to entertain ourselves different ways. So
yes.
My mother was big on westerns, comedies, and so her thing was Wild Wild West was one of her favorite shows.
Mm-hmm.
The Wild Wild West television show. I would sit and watch that with her, and I liked the science fiction-y aspects of it, the retro-futuristic aspects. And so I said, one day I want to write something like this. I understood that I was about 2 years old. I understood that people had to write these shows. And it probably came from talking to my mother and my sisters, about that. So I said, I want to write this, something like that one of these days. I hadn't started reading just yet. So my sister saw I had this love for science fiction. They said, we're going to experiment with our brother and see if we can get him to read it too. So they got me comic books.
2 years old. Okay.
Yeah, they gave me comic books, and I'd look at the comics, and I can kind of get the story from what I saw in the artwork. And they would say, well, read the words. I said, how? They said, sound it out. They taught me how to sound out words. So I'm sounding out the words, and words I couldn't understand, I'd ask them how to sound that out. They sounded out with me, and then I wanted to know what the words meant, because I wanted to tell them what the story was about. I knew how to pronounce the words now, but I didn't know what those words meant.
Sure.
And I'm kind of making up what they meant based on what I see in the pictures.
Right.
And they would say, no, that's not exactly what that's about, And so they would tell me the words. They would give me the words, and I would have to say the word and say what the words meant 10 times or what have you. And so I built up a strong vocabulary. I would recognize those words and know exactly what they meant. Okay. So then I was able to read those, and at 2, I was reading.
Wow.
And so then at that point...
Hold on. How old was your sister?
My oldest sister at that time was 12, and the other one was 9.
So they were big. And you were the last...
I'm the baby.
The baby.
Of us 3.
Wow. Okay. So they had time to sit there and play with you.
Yeah. And it was like, because they didn't have nothing to do either. So they figured, we'll experiment and see if we can get him to read. And I was reading. I was doing algebra at 4. And so my godmother was a assistant principal at a school, elementary school, and so then they got me into the school, young. They lied and put on my records I was 5. In Chicago, you can't go to kindergarten until you're 5. Down here in Atlanta, you can't go until you're 6. But they put that I was 5 and I was actually 4. And I started school, and actually then I made 2 doubles. So I ended up 3 years ahead of myself. They took 1 double away because it was crazy. I went to, like I said, a school in the hood, and there was fights, and everybody was way bigger than me, and even though I was a martial artist, they were just too big for me to handle at that age.
When did you start your martial arts?
At 4.
4, okay.
Yeah. Wow. The way I started that was, my dad would always take me to see, my dad's he passed last year, but he was an indigenous African martial arts expert. You didn't have anybody else doing that in Chicago at the time. And we would go to see movies together a lot. And he sparked my love for film, which I'm a filmmaker as well. But we would go to these kung fu movies, and I'd come back trying to do kung fu, and they would just get on his nerves. And so he said, you know what, it's time for you to start training. I said, yeah, okay, and kung fu, indigenous African martial arts, and I didn't know what that was. I just kind of shrugged my shoulders. Like, okay,
all right, yeah.
It's all kung fu, and he said, you'll see, it's not all kung fu. And so he began to teach me at that time.
Wow.
Yeah. So being in that hood school, fighting every day, my mother said, we'll take a step back and take away one of those doubles because it's just too much.
So a double is what? You skip a grade?
You skip, and I skipped. I went to 1st grade, skipped 2nd grade, went to 3rd. Then skipped 4th grade. They put me in 5th, but then she put me back to 4th. Then, which was probably the best thing that happened to me, because my 4th grade teacher, she was crazy as a Betsy bug. But that craziness got the best out of us, because with me being considered the smartest person at the school at the time, which really wasn't saying that much for that school. You had some smart people there, but geez, it wasn't that. But I was bored easily, and so I was the talker of the class. I was always, and I was talkative anyway, so I was talking to people. They would move you during those days with the girl next to the girls, and that was even better for me. So now I'm talking to the girls, even more. They said, we don't know what to do with him. He's just talking, and I was just really bored. But Miss Johnson, she killed all of that. She didn't play. And those days, teachers could spank you. I think her spanking went beyond, but it straightened all those boys out. When she would stand us in line, punch us in the shoulder.
What?
Oh man, yeah.
She was a drill instructor.
Oh, she was nuts. She lived on my block across the street, and eventually, as we got older, we saw that there was some issues there. To the point, one of my oldest sister and her had words because she tried to hit me with a 2x4 because I was riding on her side of the street with a bike.
Oh no. Okay.
Oh yeah. But she straightened us out in school. She would always win for Teacher of the Year and all, because she was straightening boys out. They didn't know she was straightening us out because we had the fear of her. We feared her more than God. We were scared of her. So that straightened me out, gave me more discipline. So I wasn't talking all the time. And then I ended up going to a school for the gifted that next year.
On the 5th grade?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
so were you writing stories?
Yeah, I've always been writing. I was writing stories. I would tell, so my mother would always say, tell us, what movie you saw. And I would talk about, because me and my father would do father-son bonding time at the drive-in, right? And so I would come back and tell him the movies I saw, and I would talk for about however long the movie was. If it was 2 hours, I would talk for that long. And I'm doing all the lines, and I couldn't remember stuff, so I'd make up parts of the lines, and I'm doing the fight scenes and everything, So that began my storytelling process there, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. So in kindergarten, you learn to write rudimentarily. So I started writing these little stories. I would make little comic books for my friends. Couldn't draw. I always said if I could draw, I'd be a millionaire right now because I can write well. And if I could draw too, oh boy, So, but I would write the stories, and one of my friends, Tracy, he could draw, and he would draw the comics, would draw what I wrote, and we would sell the comic books.
Wow, what?
Yeah.
He was in business.
In business. Yeah.
And this is what grade?
That was in 1st through 3rd grade.
Uh-huh.
I would do that. And then when I went to the school for the gifted, they would, it was a school that was 80%, 90% Jewish, so they had a lot of funding.
Okay.
That's when they started the busing thing, and of course, they get more funding than we would in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So they saw that I had a writing talent, and so they began to do things like have me write books, and they would have professionals buying them.
What?
To this day, it's Decatur Classical School. They have 2 of my books in the school in a case that I did for them. One got published by Writer's Digest.
What?
Yeah, I was 10 years old at the time.
I'm a Writer's Digest fan of the 80s and 90s. Not
this was
some of the 90s.
This was in the 70s, but yeah, it was in the 70s.
Wow. Yeah, because that was a big thing. Reader's Digest was big. Through all this encouragement, what did you see, or what did you expect? What did you believe was going to happen with your writing?
Well, I really wanted to be a neuroscientist, neurosurgeon/neuroscientist. So I remember when I dislocated my knee. I went to the hospital. I dislocated at the school, and the teachers took me to the hospital, and one of the guys asked me, one of the doctors said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Mm-hmm. And I said, I want to be a well, before I could say it, one of the teachers from the school said, oh, he's going to be a author one day. And
I said, you volunteered it in there.
Yeah, I said, no, I'm going to be but I was insulted by it. Strangely enough. And the insult was, how can she speak for me and what I'm going to be, and I said, no, I want to be a neuroscientist and a neurosurgeon.
Okay.
And she said, no, you're going to be a writer one day.
Okay.
I said, how could this lady tell me I'm going to be a writer? I'm going to be a neurosurgeon and a neuroscientist, And I said, I like writing. It's fun. But it wasn't something that I saw myself doing as a career. I just loved it so much. And I thought, when you do something that you love, that's hobby. And you do what you have to do to make money. And if you're going to make money, you make big money. So you be a doctor, a lawyer. This is what we're taught growing up. You be a doctor, a lawyer, or a stockbroker or something like that.
A career that brings in cash. That's right.
Mm-hmm. So when I got to high school, still writing a little bit. You know, I was
for fun.
But now I'm focused on girls and looking cool and all of that. But I ended up, in 8th grade, I saw people playing this new game called Dungeons and Dragons.
Uh-huh.
And I said, what is that? But all the white children were playing Dungeons and Dragons. No black children. So I said, well, what is this game? And none of them would tell us. They would say something like, well, it's something that you wouldn't understand.
Huh.
I'm like, wow, I wouldn't understand. And I said, well, why wouldn't I understand? It was, it's something that you guys don't do. You guys? Who are you guys? Mm-hmm. Black guys. So what? So all of them, my friends were like, what the hell? We don't. And there was a guy I went to Decatur Classical with. His name is Lawrence. I won't say his last name because I don't want him to sue me. But he, white guy, we were pretty cool. So I went to him. He was playing. I said, hey, Lawrence, can you show us how to play this game? He says, oh, you guys wouldn't understand it. I said, damn, he knows I'm an intelligent brother. You know what? I don't understand it. Okay, so now I also was, somewhat arrogant. You tell me I can't understand something, I'm going to prove you wrong. Mm-hmm. So we're watching these guys play, and every so often they would look over their shoulder, like, why are you watching me, that kind of thing. Finally, this one guy, Philip, he says, hey, I'll teach you guys how to play, man. I'll teach you guys. So we say, cool. We go to the library, and we're playing. He keeps calling us orcs. You orcs that better move. So and for some reason, orc, it struck me as like, I didn't want to be called an orc. It struck me as wrong. Oh, you damn orc. Just shut up, that kind of stuff. So I say, hey, man, look, you call us orc one more time, I'm going to whoop your ass. I don't know what an orc is, but I don't like it. And so we all walked out on him. And I said, you know what? I'm going to get the books. I don't know how. I'm going to get the books. So I talked to my sisters. I told them the story. They said, you know what? We'll get you the books. They got me all of the Dungeons and Dragons books over Christmas holiday, and I made it my point to stay inside during Christmas holiday and learn that game. And I realized, okay, you go through these adventures. The adventures cost money. I don't have money to be buying all these adventures. I'm going to write the adventures. And that's what really got me writing more. Oh. That's got me back into my writing again, writing strong. And at this point, I said I was going to be a stockbroker. But I was also going to write, a book someday. Yeah. And Harriet Tubman was my idol. And I said, the first book I write, Harriet Tubman is going to be the star in this kind of Wild Wild West world. Mm-hmm. And that seemed strange. And my friends were like, that's weird, but, you could probably pull it off. You could write pretty good, but that's weird. So I wrestled with different ways of doing that for years. I was always off to the side trying to write. And when I went off to college, I majored in finance because I was going to be a stockbroker. Mm-hmm. That I was listening to the middle sister be a stockbroker. And I said, no, I'm going to do what I love. I'm going to write. I left that school. I was at Howard University. Howard is 13 girls to one guy. And so I was totally unfocused. And I knew it. I got there on scholarship, and I was going to lose my scholarships because I was so focused on all those women. I'd never been around that large amount of beautiful women in my life. So I said, man, you know what? I'll fail if I keep this up. And so to save myself, I said, I'm not going back to the school. I'm not going back to Howard. It'll be the end of me. Mm-hmm.
That's good that you thought that through, because most men be like, I'm going back. It's party time.
Yeah, well, the martial arts has taught me to be introspective, and always see your weaknesses. And I knew that was it for me. Mm-hmm. I was gonna, and my mother was like, "This was the best move you ever did." Because when I went at Howard, I was making a couple of A's and B's just to maintain, but I was getting C's and D's. Never gotten that in my life. I never got lower than a B in my life until I went there.
Oh wow!
So I came back to Chicago and I said, "Well, I'm going to go ahead and pursue what I really want to do, and that's writing." And Miss McElroy, that was the teacher that said I was going to be a writer. I said, she's right. It's really, it was strong with me at that point. And so I went to Columbia College.
Okay.
And at Columbia, I love the setup because, in colleges you have a 3-hour class. That means you go 3 hours a week. So 1 hour one day, 1 hour, 1 hour. So it's 3 days a week. There, if you have a 3-hour class, it's like a workshop. You're there for 3 hours, just 1 day a week. Mm-hmm. And that was a perfect setup for writers because you're in there 3 hours, you're writing. Mm-hmm. And you're sharing what you write. You're getting critiqued by the professor and the students. So, the professor's one thing, but the students are going to be your readership. Mm-hmm. So,
so at the end of 3 hours, you have built something.
Yes.
Put something together.
And the next class, the next week, you have a week to write, and so you're really writing some strong stuff. Mm-hmm. Strong for a college student. And so that next week, you're always I was competitive. They'd say, you're the best writer. And when I went to the school, I was a rapper, too. Okay. And so when I first went to the science fiction writing class, and my nickname was Quiz. My rapper handle was Quiz, and that was my nickname all around, Quiz. Mm-hmm. So I had this jacket, and it had Quiz down the arm. On the back it said Mob Posse, M-O-B, Men of Business. That was our group.
Men of Business.
Yeah,
all right.
So Mob Posse. Then it had my birth name across my chest. I had different pins on there, don't hang with gangs, and red, black, and green pen, and different things on it. I had earring, hanging. So when I went into the class, I had a beard. One of the students said, excuse me, you do know this is the science fiction writing class? We were standing waiting on the professor to come. Uh-huh. I said, oh, yeah, I know. He said, well, what's your name? I said, Quiz. They said, Quiz. And they kind of snickering, looking at each other like, this guy's in the wrong class. Uh-huh. And I started getting, kind of with a street swagger just to throw him off. They said, he is really in the wrong. So they're laughing. Mm-hmm. And we were supposed to bring, something we wrote and read it to everybody. So somebody stands up and says, can Quiz read first? So it was supposed to be a joke. Mm-hmm. And when I read my piece and I got done, people were like, damn.
Yeah.
This guy can really write science fiction. And the professor was like, wow, this is some great stuff. And as everybody else read, the consensus was that I was the best writer in the class, and that stuck. And I was, and being competitive, I said, you know what, I'm going to continue to be that. And I continued to really just, every week, I was in there just really writing, doing the best work I could do. I was there in my creative writing class, trying to write real strong stuff and be the best writer at that school. And my goal was, when I leave Columbia, they'll say that he was the best writer we ever had walk through those doors. And so I really started just honing my craft, studying books on writing outside the class, and I had some great teachers. But I incited a riot at the school and lost my scholarship, so I had to leave there. Yes, I never got my degree. I went against this racist professor. He was the chairman of the school, and I will name him, Gary Johnson. I wrote a story called The Thing, based off of, there's a story by Dostoevsky called The Nose, where this person loses his nose in some bread, and he's chasing his nose all around Moscow, right, in St. Petersburg. I wrote The Thing about this guy who loses his penis in a prostitute, and he's chasing his penis all over Chicago. And so it was a funny thing, just a one-time thing I was messing around with, to do a parody of
The
Nose, right? So Gary says, you're a great writer, but that's your best work. I said, what? It was just a joke, He said, I want you to keep writing stuff like that. So I said, oh, Gary, comedies, I do comedy every now and then. He said, no, not comedy, man. Write the real stuff, the black stuff that like that was. Mm. I said, all my stuff, I always have black heroes. And he said, no, I'm talking about, you write, stuff that happens in the hood, rapes, gangbanging, the prostitutes, the pimps, that kind of stuff, man. That's the real black stuff. That's the stuff. I said, that's not my life, man. He said, come on, man. Where do you live in Chicago? I said, I live on the west side of Chicago, and I haven't seen a pimp in my life. I said, I've seen a couple of prostitutes. Yes, I've seen gangbangers. They're in my family, but gangbangers tell me if I tried to gangbang right now, they would tell me, no, man, you stick to school.
Yeah.
Said, those are the kind of gangbangers that I know of. I said, I don't know about these, all this other stuff and people getting raped under train stations and I don't know none of that. He said, yeah, you do, and that's what you're going to write. I said, no, that's not what I'm going to write. And I was telling other students, and they said, hey, but Gary did it to me. In different class. Gary did it to me, and Gary did it to all these students. And so I began to collect their stories, and I said, you know what? We're going to demand that Gary is removed as the chairman.
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking there's going to be justice and all of that. And so, we demanded justice, and we boycotted his classes.
Hold on. I want to pause. You said, and I'm thinking there's going to be justice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to laugh I'm not laughing at the situation. It's just, we expect, we idealize certain things to happen accordingly.
Yeah,
you put in the work, you have a task, you set a goal, and you put it to work, and you say, yeah, there should be justice.
Right.
Like this stuff should come through.
Yeah. You think, that he would be removed, and it would be, yay, we won. A bunch of college students, please. This man was a tenured professor. He was the chairman of the creative writing department. It wasn't.
He ain't going nowhere.
Nah. So we led this thing, and the way they stopped our little rebellion, which lasted for 2 classes, they said, you know what? Everybody involved in this, we're going to fail. And the leaders, we're going to have kicked out of the school, and everybody backed out of it. But me. I'm still trying to... They brought me to the office. They said, look, in your rebellion, we'll allow you to continue to continue at the school, but we're going to remove the scholarship. You've done too much damage because, I had it all in newspapers and everything.
Right.
He said, we're going to remove your scholarship, but you can continue to come to the school. We can't kick you out of school. You're a straight-A student. But they knew I couldn't afford to go... Columbus is expensive. I couldn't afford... It was back then, I think $7,980. And the reason why I remember it so well is because I looked at that price and almost had a heart attack. $7,000 a semester? No, quarters.
A quarter. This is in the 80s.
I couldn't do it. This was in the 80s.
80s.
I couldn't do that, man. I'm like, damn. Which that seems like little to people listening now, young folks. Like, wow, that was a cheap school. No, back then that was a lot. You're talking. Close to $40,000 a year. Let me see, almost $8,000, so like $32,000 a year. It wasn't going to happen.
Minimum wage.
Yeah, exactly. $5.15. As much as my mother and my father loved me, they couldn't afford to, pay that for me. I mean, they could have. My father could have, especially, but that would have really hurt in other things he was doing. And my sisters. I was 18. Well, both my sisters were out of college at that time, and they probably could have pitched in, but I wasn't trying to hurt nobody's pockets.
Right. No, yeah.
Off of something that I did, really, I looked at it as like, well, I could have just told this guy, no, I'm not going to do it. He failed me, then I sued the school. That would have been a smarter thing to do, but I didn't know.
Right.
I thought, I was going to really
the energy of
social
the youth.
Justice. And I wasn't smart enough to tell my mother and father I was planning to do this, so they would have been like, son, it's not going to... Even my sisters, you might not want to do that, it won't work well. This was something I did on my own. I was going to show them that, I did this, and they would be so proud.
If you're enjoying the Artist King podcast, then please consider leaving a shout out on iTunes, Spreaker.com, or StitchRadio.com under Artist King. For more information on the subjects discussed in the Artist King podcast, please visit www.artistking.org.
All right.
So whenever somebody says, did you learn your writing from college? Some of it, but most no. Now my screenwriting, which most writers that I'm around some great writers. They can't screenwrite. The format scares the hell out of them. we had to write a screenplay every week. And so I can write a screenplay, a good one, in 3 days.
Wow.
Yes, because I'm so used to that format.
Mm-hmm. So all that training, all that time, the school, the assignments, and then your own learning. And this is because now you know you want to be a writer and get paid to write.
Right.
So when did you start making money besides the comic books that you were drawing with your childhood friend?
Well, I got married. Had my first baby while I was in college. I was 19, and so I said, okay, I got to make some money right off. So I do little odd jobs and teaching martial arts here and there. Maybe have 3 or 4 students. Just a little money so I could buy diapers and stuff for the baby.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up getting working at department stores and all of that good stuff. I ended up being a model for and you can't see it now, but back in the day, a model for and representative for the Aramis company, which makes Drakkar Noir and different stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, pretty good pay, but I was surrounded by an element of folks that I didn't want to be around. It was, woo boy. So you're talking, Freak City, that kind of, I didn't want to be around that. So I backed out of that and ended up getting married and went off to the Army.
Okay.
In the Army, I was writing. When I wasn't working, I was writing. Even at work, sometimes I write.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because the kind of work I did, you're listening to phone conversation, you're interpreting it from a foreign language into English. I won't say what I did, but so I won't say what my career was, but
sure.
That's basically what we did. And then I would write, man, and at that point I said I'm going to be in Marvel Comics.
Marvel Comics, okay.
I wrote to Marvel, and I sent them a manuscript. I said, I got the wild idea. I'm not just going to send a query letter. I'm going to send them this manuscript. Mm-hmm. I'm going to revive Luke Cage.
Okay.
Power Man, because that's the, person I really like. Power Man, that's the first black hero I was into. I knew there was Falcon, Black Panther, but I resonated more with Luke Cage. Mm-hmm. I wrote a 6-comic miniseries, sent it to them. They wrote me back and said Cage would not be a viable character. Nobody was interested in black characters on a large scale. But I wrote well, and they would be interested in seeing what else I could do with one of their established characters. Mm-hmm. I said, to hell with them at that point. But then, that next year, Cage, the limited series comes out. It's my story.
What?
I pursued trying to sue them, but they had changed enough and didn't use any of the character names that I came up with and stuff, and where I couldn't sue them. Because you can't sue for an idea. Mm.
I see.
And they didn't put it in the exact order that I put it in the story, but it was the same story. Yeah. And they mysteriously revived Cage.
Do you have that story still? Do you have that manuscript? Somewhere?
I might have it somewhere in one of my trunks. I have several trunks with all my writing and stuff.
Shit, we need to recruit somebody to some artists.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Fuck it.
Yeah.
It won't be called Luke Cage. It'll be something else.
Right, Bruce Cage.
But no, hell yeah, man. Shit. Anyways.
Yeah. So,
dang it. Well, that's the industry, man. That's how it goes. That's the business.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at that point, I didn't want to write for the big two, and that was good because that made me say, okay, I want to be independent. But it took me years because you couldn't afford to be independent back then. No. It's not like now. You have create space back then and all that. So how am I going to do this? So I'm just going to continue to write, and someday I'm going to have the money to really just form a small press publishing company. I'm going to put my own stuff out. Mm-hmm. I wrote, continued to write, continued to have children, and but writing was always there. And I was writing short stories, hundreds of them. I have hundreds of if not thousands, 1,000. I have hundreds of them, close to 1,000 short stories. but no novels. And I knew you can't make money off short stories unless you're doing anthologies. And one guy doing the anthology, people were like, oh, okay, I don't know about that.
What's an anthology?
Anthology is a collection of short stories. So, like our book Steamfunk, that's a collection of stories from 15 authors writing these steampunk stories. And steampunk is African/African American inspired steampunk, basically.
Okay.
And we're writing these 15 authors. So people will go with that because they say, okay, if I don't like that one author, I can go with another.
And does so those stories center similar characters or something?
No, similar. It could be similar setting, similar theme. Mm-hmm. It could be a similar. It could be.
It has to be something that connects them
it's
together.
Some thread, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, ours was basically none of the stories are the same at all,
right?
But it's the same genre.
Oh, okay.
Which is steampunk. Okay. Steampunk is so specific that can work.
Okay.
If you say it's science fiction, a lot of times, because people say, well, anthology don't work, that's because it's too broad. Like, if you say science fiction, well, that could be different things. That could be slipstream, that could be hard sci-fi, soft sci-fi, and you have different fans of different types of science fiction. When you say steampunk, you know what you're getting, and people are looking for that, and so that anthology worked. It's a big seller. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I have to do a novel if I'm going to make some money from this, right? And if I'm going to convince my wife this is what I'm going to do for a career, because one day I'm going to do this full time. I knew I was teaching martial arts up until last year when I had to semi-retire from it. But I was teaching full time and writing. Now I write full time. But I wrote this book, Chronicles. Well, first I was afraid of novels. They scared the heck out of me.
Short stories was your thing.
Yeah, to do 300 pages, 200 pages, that was frightening. My sister, thank God, they've always been like a driving force for me. She said a few years ago, about 7 years ago, there's the Black Writers Reunion and Conference going on in Atlanta. I'm going to send you to it. Oh, okay, thanks. Thanks. She says, I'm going to, it's just something telling me I should, send you to this, and I'm going to give it to you as a gift. So thank you.
Yeah.
I went to that. I had written one book already, a nonfiction book on African martial arts. And that was 5 years in the making, and it was doing well. And so I was proud of it. I said, okay, I'll take that book with me. And, so I went there, and people say, well, what have you written? I take that book out, and they look at it like it was a piece of poop. Like, how can you do? Because it's a real, you write fiction. It's a fiction snob conference. If you don't write fiction, if you haven't written any novels, you aren't doing anything, that kind of thing. So I'm like, wow, my feelings were hurt, but I put my book away. I was ashamed to pull it out. I said, damn. I said, but these people write novels. Let me look at what they're writing. So, because they're so snobbish, it must be great stuff.
Right.
And I look, and it's like it's garbage, man. And, street lit stuff, and and I know they're hearing me on there, and I'm saying it. It was garbage. So I said, if they can write that, if they can write novels, I can. And that's what actually made me start writing. So I went home that weekend and started writing Moses, the Chronicles of Harriet Tubman. And it took me 60 days to pen it. I was at the time writing only by pen first. Then I would type it, edit it. As I wrote it and when I typed it and everything. I had the book. I said, okay, I'm going to send this to publishers and see what happens. First publisher I sent it to bought it.
What?
And I didn't know what, I just wanted to write something like The Wild Wild West with Harriet Tubman as a hero. And I said, I'm going to put this out there. It's so weird. I'll send it to small press because larger press is not going to take a risk on something strange like this.
Yeah.
And the woman wrote back, she said, this is a great steampunk story. I said, oh, thanks, yeah. I had never heard the word steampunk in my life. I turned to my wife, I said, finally I have a term for what I've been writing.
Yeah.
And that was how my first book got published. And then I knew I had a viable product. And at that point, I said, I'm going to go out and start writing stuff. I met Milton Davis, right? And Milton had contacted me years before. He had seen my book on the African martial arts. He writes Sword and Soul, which is African-inspired epic fantasy. Epic fantasy has a lot of fight scenes. And he wanted to have authentic African martial arts because it's set in Africa. Mm-hmm. You know, when I had the guys doing kung fu in there in Africa, right?
Right.
So he had contacted me before, and I didn't really think he was, serious. Yeah, this guy just saying he's not really serious. And so we didn't hook up until later, but we had seen each other around, and so we said, okay, we're going to meet. And after I met him, man, and I saw what he had been putting out on his own, I said, it's time for me to just go ahead. And he kept saying, man, you need to put your own stuff out. He said, he published my book, Once Upon a Time in Africa, but he said, he said, you know what, you should do this yourself. I didn't fully have the confidence at that point. I said, no, you can go ahead and do it, publish it, man,
Mm-hmm.
He said, okay. And he kept saying, next book, though, you need to publish yourself.
Mm-hmm. Still
Still not listening. I sent my third book, Redeemer, to the same person that published Moses Chronicles of Harriet Tubman. I shouldn't have. I should have put that out myself. Redeemer 2, which is going to include Redeemer 1, is going to be put out by me. So that after that third book, I then began to publish my own books.
So what was the experience like with the third book, Redeemer, the first part that made you realize you need to publish yourself?
Redeemer got such a strong response. Redeemer is a science fiction. It was my answer to my hatred. I don't want to say hatred. My disdain for street lit, the way it's written.
Mm-hmm. What is street lit?
Street lit is black. How can you say it? Black street fiction. Like if you're familiar with Slim, what's his name? Iceberg Slim.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Goins is one of my favorite writers. Okay, so I hesitate to call that street lit, but it's that kind of. They're trying to write like Donald Goins.
Something that's
Cotton Comes to Harlem is written by Donald Goins.
Uh-huh.
That's a classic. Okay, it's one of my favorite books. It's what would be kind of like black exploitation. But, the old black exploitation films had a message. Mm-hmm. So did the books. Mm-hmm.
But once it gets popular, people want to cash in on that.
Right, and so they started
theme.
writing. Well, a lot of people from prison started wanting to tell their stories that they experienced outside, and of course they embellished it. Because of the stuff they, so it's always stuff like, books like Holes on the Come Up, Prostitute Killers from the West Side, that kind of stuff. It's like, this is some garbage, man, and it's poorly. Now, if you take Prostitute Killers from the West Side and it's well written, it wouldn't be my cup of tea, but okay, it's well written, it's well edited, but they don't edit the things, and it's hard to edit a book yourself. If you don't have the money to pay for an editor, okay, really look over your stuff and do the best you can, but you're going to miss some things. Mm-hmm. So you send it to a person, and they're going to miss some things. You really should send it to multiple editors, okay? Or really anal people that are your friends you send it to, and they'll edit it just because they're anal, and they look and say, I can't stand that word being mistaken, and you get free editing. Just so you all know, if you want to get free editing, if you can't afford it, you send it to your anal friends, right? So, but when this stuff is not edited, it's so many plot holes. It's like Swiss cheese, man. It's just bad stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So my mother always taught me though, be solution oriented. My mother sees me with this beard. She saw me today. She didn't say anything, which surprised me. But normally she'll see the beard and she'll just hand me, here's $20. Go get a haircut and a shave. That's how she does. Uh-huh. She doesn't say, I don't like your scraggly beard, which I like my beard like this, but I don't like your scraggly beard. You need to shave it. She'll give me the money.
The solution.
Right, and that's how she's always been, how she's always taught us. You don't talk about something unless you can solve it, because then you're just being a jerk, right? So that's how we've always learned. So you solve problems.
Right.
So I said, okay, if I'm going to talk about street lit, which I love the business aspect of, they're hustlers. Mm-hmm. Street lit sells more than all of the top 5 writers in the world. I didn't say top 5 black writers.
Just writers.
In the world, it sells more than they do combined. Mm-hmm. That's how powerful street lit is. Mm-hmm. So it's really selling. It's from those people hustling. They'll set up a table on the street in New York and just start selling books. There's a gentleman here, Relentless Aaron. He'll set up and he can't just do it legally and say, hey, I have an office here. He'll just start writing in Starbucks, and he'll happen to have his books out on the table. Right. And people say, what is that? And he'll sell his books right there. Mm-hmm. And he's one of the biggest sellers that's out. He got picked up by a major, a street-lit imprint under the majors. All the major publishers have street-lit imprints because it's gotten so popular from these guys hustling out of their trucks, out of their trunks of their cars.
Sure.
So I like the hustle. I said, I want to have the hustle, but I want to write something. I already got the hustle of that, but I want to have something
that's of substance.
That right, is of substance, that is science fiction. And a lot of science fiction people attack street lit. So I said, I want to bridge the gap. And it's not going to be a street lit science fiction hybrid. It's going to be a science fiction tale that's gritty, that takes place in the street. And so I pulled it off.
And that was Redeemer.
And it's gotten it's really popular. And I couldn't cash in on it. Somebody else did. And I said, I'm not doing it no more. Because the person who publishes it, I won't name, but I know she's listening. She listens when I do interviews.
At Artist King.
She won't even sell me the books at a discounted rate. I have to buy them at full price, so I can't sell them. I don't sell them at cons and things like that because I'm not going to buy those books at full price.
Right.
And I'm not making money, or I have to charge exorbitant prices to make some money.
Right.
I say, hey, sell them to me at at 50%, that which is outrageous, but I need full price for them. Like, what? I wrote the book, And
but you still get your royalty from the sales of the book, or somehow contract.
I haven't seen any.
Oh, okay.
No. That's another story, and that's why I exclusively publish my own stuff now. Only time somebody else does something that publishes my stuff, if I submit a short story to an anthology, and I've gotten so many of those published at this point, I really can't tell you the number of them. And they're not mine. When the money pops up in my bank, the few dollars that it is, it's like, okay, it's a couple more dollars in the bank. But you can't really make money from that. Self-publishing is the way. If you really want to make money, if you're going to make a living, you have to self-publish.
It's about the business. You have to be about the business.
Have to, if you're constantly waiting on somebody else to do this for you. A lot of people still waiting on Hollywood. How long are you going to wait? These people say,
that's a long line.
One day Hollywood is going to accept us. And how long are you going to wait? They haven't done it. Hollywood's been around for 100 years. They haven't accepted the work. They haven't made a black hero consistently in all this time. You'll see Denzel in a couple of films, Will Smith, but this old rehash stuff, it's not. Let somebody put out something real strong, and they're not gonna put you out there.
Okay, so with that in mind, that's the themes of your books. You're being part of the solution.
Yes.
By the substance that's included in your books.
Absolutely. All of my heroes are black. People are doing a big movement, multicultural movement, and they'll say, I have heroes of all hues except white people, right? And this is, it's almost a reaction or a slap in the face. You're gonna accept us one of these days. It's not white people's responsibility to write black heroes. They never have. They don't see it as a viable product. So why do it? And it's not their responsibility. It's our responsibility. It's not my responsibility to write a Chinese hero. If I choose to do that, I do it. But I do feel it's my responsibility to show strong black images. I feel that's my responsibility as a black man, right? And as a writer. And it's just what I want to see because I grew up not seeing it. I love science fiction and fantasy. Obviously, I don't have a problem with reading other heroes because we didn't have them. So all the years that I was reading until I started reading Milton Davis and Charles Saunders and all that, we didn't have any black heroes in the books. They you were a savage, noble savage. You were some kind of savage in the book. And so what is my writing an answer to that? It was a reaction to that originally. Now I just write the stories that I want to see, and whoever reads them, reads them. Everybody reads them. At one point, I was being disturbed because but I understand why. I had a larger white readership than I had black readership. I said, hey, well, I'm doing something. This isn't supposed to happen. What happened, But when I was looking at my bank statements, I was happy. But I realized it's because we weren't getting out there educating people. And so then I started doing, with Milton, started forming these different events. And events to educate and let people know we're here. And I wrote a couple of blogs that are entitled "We're Here."
We're here.
Because people just didn't know. There was one woman, she wrote a blog crying that there's no black science fiction out. It's not there, and no black fantasy. I said, we're here. And I wrote, the thing. And after that, even this year, the big mainstream Time and all these big newspapers, they started saying that.
That there's nothing.
Yeah, that's nothing. And I'm like, wait a minute. And,
they just not looking.
And a couple of people got insulted, but I realized theirs is a different reason. This woman was lamenting she wanted it. Time and all that, I just saying it doesn't exist.
So don't look.
Right. Just keep on over here because it's not out there, folks.
Yeah.
And we're like, that's a lie. It's here.
I think I read that your blog because I remember that story about the Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, I read it.
Yeah, that's a popular. It's called Racism in Role Playing. That thing got popular. I write stuff, leave it out there, see what happens. The first time I put it out there was about 3 years ago, and about 1,000 views in one day. So okay, this is a popular one. Okay, good. And I was surprised about 3 weeks ago. I'm looking at my stats. I said, what in the world? Why is it 2,000 views of this thing? Where's this coming from? And there was a site I'd never been to because it's for like teenagers, Reddit.com. Somebody posted that about racism. And, you got teens, so they was, most were in support of what I wrote. Some were like, this guy just has his head up his ass. It's not about racism. It's about most blacks don't play role playing, so it's about percentages. Lie, again. But, it's a teenager. They don't know what the heck they're talking about.
Right.
So, just saying, but my wife was like, are you going to get on and say something? I said, no, I'm just going to see how this plays out. And, so many people are reading this, so it's getting out to a new audience now.
Yes.
But that put in my mind, it's important. This is the year, I believe, for YA and middle grade books to come out. That is where we've been missing.
Young.
Yes, from a business standpoint, we've been writing what we want to read. Milton, me, other writers that I know who are considered at the top of writing black speculative fiction, we've been writing stuff we want to see. And so it's attractive to adults, some of the older teens, but my focus for my next couple of books is really going to be on these teens and middle grade. Because that's what we're missing, and that's because even the adults who are buying our books are saying, man, I've missed the boat, but my children will love this. So they're buying it for their teens and their tweens. And that's where really I believe the big focus is going to be at. That's where the energy's at. That's when you start seeing cosplaying our stuff. That's where it's going to happen at. And so that's where my focus is at.
So what projects do you have coming up that focus on that or are part of your plans?
I'm writing the keys now. I'm really, it's not chapters. It's a choose your own adventure type of book. I call it You Are the Hero. It's the You Are the Hero series, but it's the first in that series called The Keys. And in that book, I'm probably maybe 20 pages away from being done. That is a YA book. And it is about a boy of African descent, a girl of Aztec descent, and they are what's known as the keys. They are the living embodiment of God. He's the living embodiment of African God. She's the living embodiment of the Aztec one.
That's the book we're going to draw.
Exactly.
All right.
Right. So I'm writing the Choose Your Own Adventure book first, and then we'll do the graphic novel, and I think that's going to really corner the market on that age group.
Got it.
And it's going to give them stuff they've never seen. They've never seen African gods or Aztec God done in this way. Good. Where it's done with some honor, and with power, and it's just an intro to where I want to go with everything. It's rooted in the pyramids, because I've recognized there's pyramids in every culture. Every culture had pyramids. But the only ones that have stood the test of time are the ones that are in Africa and the ones that are in South America.
Yeah.
And in the book, I did with why that is.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
All right. That's a good. I want to read that.
Yeah.
And draw it.
Yeah, for sure.
I draw the children's version too. Oh yeah. I can draw round faces.
Oh yeah. We're gonna start with the teens first,
Okay.
because
Yeah,
when I write, somebody's always getting their butt whooped, killed, or, it's some stuff, and it's got a few horror elements and stuff like that.
Got it.
The one for the little, not little children. That would be hard for me, but for the middle grade, which is like that 8 to 10-year-old, that's difficult for me. I think that's difficult for other writers. I know why they haven't done it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, you have to simplify what you're writing a lot, and it can't be. I've tried to tone down the violence and the horror stuff that I write, but it's hard without making it cheesy for me.
Yeah.
That takes a real skill. I really respect people that write children's books, because that write them well. That takes a skill. Someone like Nadia Corfu, who writes books for children, she might scoff at that. She doesn't like to be defined. But her books are really popular with the youth, from children to teens. And she's a master at that.
Got it.
It takes a skill. I think women are better at it. Men, we like to just beat stuff down. And I'm great at writing fight scenes from my martial art experience. So teen is probably as young as I'll go. Milton Davis has a book, Amber in the Hidden City. That is for probably 10 years old on up, so it's more in the YA, older middle grade to YA type of level.
All right, so if people want to catch up with your books and purchase them, you have them online and a website. What's it called?
Yes, it's RoaringLionsProductions.com. That's where my books and movies are available.
Okay. Yeah. We'll have to sit down another time and talk about the movie stuff.
Yeah.
I know that's
That's
another long conversation. Cool. And the Chronicles of Harriet is, you have a website for
Yes,
that
chroniclesofharriet.com is my blog. It's where I write about steampunk, sword and soul, speculative fiction in general, and the craft of writing. Because I feel that we have to learn the craft, and that if we know the craft, teach it so the next generation of people can come up. And the people right now can improve their writing. Not that I'm the best in the world, but I think I'm pretty good at it.
We want to see good books and good stories.
For sure.
So that means we have to spread that knowledge out.
Right.
Very good. Do you have a Twitter?
Yes, my Twitter is at Baba_Balogun. BALOGUN at Baba BABA_Balogun BALOGUN.
Well, thank you very much, Balogun.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
I appreciate your time.
Man, this was great.
And wishing you the best of success.
Thank you so much.
That's to offer. All right.
Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
This has been an Artist King presentation, and I am your host, DTM. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.